What's up, guys? It's your girl, Ginger, the true crime queen. I'm reminding you now that listener discretion is always freaking advised, you guys. The dark nature of this show is not suitable for young ears or those that are sensitive to graphic material. But without further ado, let's freaking get it! Welcome back, my loves. Firstly, I need to say that I am so freaking sorry that I was late with the latest podcast episode. I've kind of hit a roadblock as far as how much time I have to research and record these episodes with the struggle of homeschool and a little bit of postpartum depression. Anyways, if you can be patient, I promise that I will continue to crank out the killer content as much as I can. With that being said, for this week, I thought we should take it old school and go back to the story of Jerry Brudos, a guy that would seek his victims out simply because he liked their shoes.
Oh my god, shoes.
Yeah, if you're wearing a pair of Louboutins around this dude, you're fucking dead, bitch. And then he's gonna use your body like a real life doll and dress up and take pictures with you after you're dead. Yep. It's a shoe fetish and necrophilia day. We're talking Oregon State's one and only shoe fetish slayer. The depiction of this guy really doesn't seem that bad on Mindhunters, but just you fucking wait. This dude is 100% the inspiration for Woogie from There's Something About Mary. If you know, you know. Jerry is also called the lust killer or the fetish killer, but as intriguing as those names might sound, this guy is an absolute fucking loser. The name I like to use for him is creepalicious. You can add it to your vocab right now. But with most killers from the 60s, they fuck up in their teenage years, they get thrown in a mental hospital. There, they learn the ins and outs of not getting caught again. They learn to appear sane and then get re-released back into society just to kill like 4 more innocent people. Sound familiar at all? But this guy was killing people simply for their fucking shoes, you guys. You could also consider Jerry here a bit of a collector of sorts, too. He had a knack for keeping the breasts of his victims and keeping them on his wall like trophies, which is why Wendy from Mindhunters refers to Brudos as the king of souvenirs.
Oh my god! What is that?
Yeah. You guys ready? Maybe I should have said this before, but heads up, because this is a much more graphic episode than I would say most of them are. So there are going to be some trigger warnings specifically for the topic of rape, dismemberment, and necrophilia. So please listen with caution. Use those headphones so that your kids won't be asking some weird-ass questions later. All right, so Jerry fucking Brudos. He's born as Jerome. Jerome is a lot cooler than Jerry, by the way, but Jerome Henry Brudos. And he was born on January 31st of 1939 in Webster, South Dakota, to Henry and Eileen Brudos. Now, Jerome usually goes by Jerry, sometimes Jeremy. I picked Jerry because my mom's ex-boyfriend's name was Jerry, and like, fuck that guy too. So it's just kind of fitting all around here. Also, sorry to anyone who happens to be named Jerry. I'm sure you're a great person. Anyways, Jerry does actually have one older brother named Larry. So we got Jerry and Larry, and I know you're probably already thinking of that SpongeBob quote.
Gosh, Larry sure is different than Gary. And Gary and Larry are real different than Jerry.
And boy, was Jerry motherfucking Brudos as different as ever, though. Jerry's dad, Henry, reportedly had a hard time keeping a job as he was sort of a hothead, apparently. And given the time period being towards the end of the Great Depression, it was pretty hard for Jerry's dad to keep a consistent job. So they would end up having to move the family all around the Pacific Northwest quite a bit during those early childhood years. They went from South Dakota down to California and then back up to Oregon, where they would continue moving from like farm to farm in Henry's search for a more stable job placement. Truthfully though, Jerry was actually an accidental pregnancy, and his mother Eileen apparently decided that she only wanted a girl since she already had her favorite child, or, a boy, Larry. And she was actually a pretty bitter bitch when she ended up with this second boy, Jerry. She was also said to be very physically and mentally, emotionally, all of those, abusive towards only Jerry, really. And I guess it was just painfully obvious how much she hated him, like even to Jerry, by the age of just 3 or 4 years old, which is honestly really sad. I guess she would apparently dress Jerry up into little girl's clothing when he was really young, but eventually just started treating him like shit when she couldn't hide his gender anymore. So you could say he's, kind of already starting life off on the wrong foot. I'm sorry, I'm gonna probably make 3 more foot jokes if I can work them in, because little Jerry's interest wasn't in dirt or bugs, but it was actually in women's shoes, and he was said to have started this, fascination with women's high heels around the young age of 5. This was back when he had found an old pair of black patent leather stilettos with rhinestones even at a junkyard by his house. And stilettos are like those high heels with the really, really skinny heels, you guys, for any guys listening, just FYI. So baby Jerry basically brings these little hooker shoes right back home from the dump and was apparently playing dress up or something. Remember, he's 5. When his dickhead mom, Eileen, caught him and was said to have beaten the shit out of him, telling him how wrong it is to play in women's shoes and that it's disgusting and he's disgusting and that he needed to throw them back out in the trash where they belonged. Well, little Jerry, who's used to his mom being an asshole and probably wearing very vanilla-ass boring shoes, he was like, fuck that, I love these shoes. And he hid them somewhere instead. But when she found them, she again beat his ass and then brought the shoes outside and lit them on fire in the backyard so that she wouldn't ever catch Jerry playing in those shoes ever again. Now, you know what that might do to a 5-year-old's mind, you guys? But he pretty much hates his mom as much as she hates him at this point, and he subsequently builds this rebellious obsession with women's high-heeled shoes, all starting because of this. About 1945, after the Brudos family finally made their move to Riverton, California, where Jerry starts kindergarten, he's about 6 years old, he once tries to steal a pair of his teacher's high-heeled shoes that she apparently kept in one of her desk drawers for after school. She ended up finding them hidden under some toys in the classroom, and another student actually ratted Jerry out for taking and hiding the shoes. So he's obviously then gotten in trouble twice for taking the shoes, this time being embarrassed over a pair of shoes in front of other students and not necessarily for wearing them. Anyways, the next year wasn't so good for Jerry either. He reportedly failed the 2nd grade because he had missed so much school, apparently being out with the measles a bunch and sore throats, swollen glands, and even laryngitis for months at a time. And shortly after this series of sicknesses, Jerry would also start complaining of headaches and migraines that were so bad that would even affect his vision. And he's only 8 years old. But the doctors he was taken to apparently couldn't find anything wrong with Jerry's eyes, despite him complaining that he couldn't see very well. So the doctors gave him some fake, basically goggle glasses to work as a placebo, and obviously didn't help Jerry make friends very well when he was held back. Eventually, Jerry's family would continue to move around, and at some point they end up in Grants Pass, Oregon, where they happen to move next door to a family with a couple of children as well. It was then when Jerry and a neighbor boy, who was around the same age, would start sneaking into the older teenage sister's bedroom and play in her clothes. Which isn't super odd considering they're so young, but this does actually begin Jerry's new fascination in women's clothing in addition to women's high-heeled shoes. He said that he really liked the way that the fabric felt, especially the satin, when he rubbed it together. But honestly, he still isn't quite old enough to understand that he's actually forming almost a full-blown fetish. He's pretty young. All he knows is he likes women's stuff and his mom doesn't like that, and that makes it even more alluring. Soon though, Jerry would try to start building his own collection of underwear and shoes. While at the home of one of his family friends, who happened to have a teenage daughter, he found her taking a nap on top of the bed with her high-heeled shoes on. So, like a 9-year-old, Jerry legit tries to take them off of her feet while she's sleeping. But of course, she wakes up and freaks the fuck out, pretty much blowing his whole cover and outing him as a little foot freak to even, their family friends, probably embarrassing the shit out of the mom, Eileen. Once they had to move again, and Jerry didn't have nearby friends to play with anymore, he apparently became friends with some super old neighborhood lady that he would end up spending a lot of his time with. Unfortunately, she was said to have had diabetes, and eventually she got too sick for him to keep visiting, and he ended up losing literally one of the only nice mother figures around. So yet again, he's lonely, he's misunderstood, and confused for sure, just building all this aggression up. By age 10 or so, Jerry had, interestingly, dug himself a small tunnel in his backyard that he would apparently go down in to be alone. And later, he said it was there that he would end up having these weird fantasies about kidnapping his mom, or neighbor girls, or whatever, and bringing them back into his dirty, dark tunnel just to listen to them scream. I mean, the kid's 10. He's fantasizing about hearing women screaming. Fucking yikes, dude. But no one in his life seemed to notice or care that Jerry's raising some major fucking red flags already. At age 13, Jerry came across his older brother Larry's collection of hand-drawn boobies, which their mother naturally caught Jerry with. So yet again, Jerry is beaten, berated, and shamed for being a naturally curious teenage boy, and big brother Larry reaps the benefits of being the golden child yet again. Jerry didn't even bother telling his mom that they were Larry's because she wouldn't have believed him anyways. Of course, when Jerry became the natural age of puberty, he started having bedwetting problems, and not with the pee, if you catch my drift. His mom, as cringy as she is, would apparently come into the bedroom to change the sheets, and she would find them all stiff or whatever, and then force Jerry to hand wash his own sheets because she found anything remotely sexual completely disgusting and unforgivable.
Unforgivable.
And then by the time Jerry is 16 years old, so this would have been like 1955 about, he once said that he was able to break into a neighbor girl's home and steal her underwear without being caught. So obviously he's escalated to stealing panties and not just shoes now. And he said that the next day, after he'd apparently made off with the panties, he then went back to the girl's home the very next day and using a fake badge pretends to act like a fucking undercover police officer who just happens to be in the area investigating a series of panty raids. I'm not kidding. He then asked if she would come to his home and speak with him privately, which she, for some fucking reason, agreed to. Now, he's 16 years old, but for some reason, this girl must have thought that he was older and his presence must have been authoritative because that's creepy as hell. Later, when she shows up at his house, he calls up from the upper level of the home. Of course, his mom isn't home at the time. And when the girl walks up there, Jerry jumps out of the fucking closet in a mask and a camera, scaring the crap out of this girl, while simultaneously taking pictures of her terrified face. So this girl naturally runs back downstairs when Jerry apparently is able to jump out of his window and run around to the front yard where he acts again like he's a police officer, claiming that some crazed masked intruder had locked him in the garage in the backyard. Like, really, dude? And because this girl is like so freaked out by the whole fucking thing, she didn't report this to the real police either. And Jerry basically feels like he got away with it. Like, boosted his ego, honestly. He then levels up to full-blown attempted assault when he claims to have once snuck in to the bedroom of a woman who was sleeping and he attempted to rape her. But when she woke up, he thankfully got spooked and ran the fuck off. Yet again, it was also not reported to the police, and nothing would be connected to him until much, much later down the road. By age 17, Jerry's a pretty big dude, like awkwardly big and gross. And somehow, Jerry actually convinces a female schoolmate of his to let him drive her home after school. The thing is, he didn't drive her home. He drives her out to the woods instead, basically kidnapping her, and when they finally stop on the side of some random-ass road, Jerry orders this girl to get out of the car and take off her clothes, and if she didn't, he would stab her, all as he's pulling out a knife. However, she did actually refuse to get out of the car. So this asshole starts fucking punching her in the face until, thankfully, some older couple who happens to be in the area just happens to drive by and pulled over to see what was going on. Now, when this happens, Jerry's apparently like, oh, she just fell down, she's fine. Fucking classic. But these people don't believe him in the slightest because, like, that's the oldest fucking line in the book. So Jerry changes his story to him actually finding this girl getting beat up by someone else, and Jerry was actually the one helping her, to which they also don't buy. And eventually this couple just ends up calling the cops.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
So thank God Jerry's actually arrested for this, and because he's so young, he's thrown into the psych ward of the Oregon State Hospital for 9 months, and this is 1956. I heard this hospital, the specific one he was sent to, was actually the same hospital that was shown in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And that movie itself is very similar to the type of environment in which Jerry was actually being exposed to for that entire 9 months, if you've ever seen it. By April of 1956, Jerry would receive the initial diagnosis of adjustment reaction of adolescents with sexual deviation and fetishism, which sounds like an overactive, horny teenager, basically. While there, Jerry's psychiatrist, though, suggests that his sexual aggression does probably stem from the psychological issues and the hate he harbored from his mother during childhood. He was then said to have completed a psychiatric evaluation that resulted in him being diagnosed with borderline schizophrenia, believing that he does have some mental issues, but shouldn't necessarily be considered dangerous, according to them. They figured he was really just suffering from depression and teenage angst and bad judgment. Pretty much like he'll grow out of it, or it's a phase, like a boys will be boys type of fucking thing, which is so goddamn annoying, to be honest. During this time, too, Jerry was still able to attend his high school during the day, and then he would be taken to the hospital every night. And after 9 months of this, Jerry is eventually discharged after being deemed not a danger to society. Great, wonderful, grand, fucking ugh. Jerry did end up graduating, actually, with his class of 1958 from the North Salem High School in Dallas, Oregon. And Jerry did actually take some college classes and tried a Salem technical school, but apparently his attendance was trash and would eventually just stop going altogether. When Jerry wasn't able to find a job either, he would end up enlisting in the United States Army in 1959 when he's about 20 years old. But Jerry can't hang very long because while he was stationed in Georgia for basic training, he begins claiming that a random Korean lady would sneak into the barracks and seduce him. But he didn't want it and would apparently try to resist her, and they would end up fighting or something. And he's so bothered by this that he would end up complaining to his commanders because Jerry said it just like kept happening and was wondering why none of his bunkmates were helping him. And like, obviously the Army knew this wasn't actually happening and figured that he was just having some weird nightmares or something. And they eventually discharge his ass after 8 months into service for his reported bizarre or peculiar obsessions. That is how they put it. So once again, Jerry returns to Oregon to live at home with mom, Eileen. But apparently, big brother Larry had also moved back during that time. So Jerry couldn't use his bedroom. Jerry had to use the backyard shed as his bedroom. And he did. This is actually better for Jerry because no one will bother him in the shed and he can start growing his collection of underwear and shoes now. This is when Jerry Brudos begins actively stalking local women that just happen to be wearing a style of heels that appeal to him. In 1960, during the middle of the fucking day, Jerry once saw a young telephone operator who was out on her lunch break, and he liked her shoes so much, he quietly began following her. And when no one was around, Jerry tried to grab this girl from behind, totally catching her off guard. And when she started fighting back, Jerry fucking starts choking this woman until she falls unconscious, and he's finally able to run off with the shoes. Can you believe that shit? Honestly, that's scary as hell, but I mean, if he would have just said, give me your fucking shoes, she might have just gave him over. Like, the dude's fucking 6 feet tall and creepy as hell, you know? I mean, at least she didn't end up getting more hurt, you know what I mean? Jerry, though, who made off with the shoes, would then apparently take them back to his dingy little shed and hold them in his arms while he slept at night. Can you picture this shit? By age 22, Jerry had been able to acquire some type of electrical handyman job at a local radio station. And when the guys at the radio station find out that Jerry is still a virgin at 22 years old, they try to set him up on a date with an absolutely clueless 17-year-old girl named Darcy or Ralphine. Honestly, I believe she changed her name at one point, which is super fucking understandable. But the reporting of her name has been misquoted over and over, so I don't know what her original name was. So I'm just going to call her the wife, you know, because she still has dignity here. So anyways, they begin dating, and she apparently sees Jerry in this whole other light. Like, he's smart, he's older, he's handsome, rather than like the big old creepy panty sniffer he is. So when she ends up getting pregnant before graduating high school, they have to ask her parents for the permission to get married because she's so young. Now, next thing we know, Jerry's landed himself an 18-year-old bride with a baby on the way. Just like that. Boom. Fucking from virgin to dad real fucking quick. They end up getting married the next year, 1962, and Jerry becomes a 23-year-old dad to a baby girl named Megan. While the baby was still young, though, Jerry would request that while at home, his wife would be naked with high heels on 100% of the time. So he could take photos of her cleaning or cooking or doing whatever she's doing around the house. Like, I get art, but I don't know about this. This was sort of the days when, like, the man ruled the house. So his poor wife apparently obliged to his creepy photography hobby. And that is until little Megan started getting old enough to where this was definitely not appropriate behavior around children. So eventually the wife stops and Jerry suddenly can't be taking pictures of his naked wife cleaning the house anymore. Like, wah, wah, wah. And there were some weirder aspects to the type of photos that Jerry would be asking his wife to take at times. Towards the end there, I think, you know, when she's getting real uncomfortable, Jerry was apparently asking her to, like, pose on their little daughter's tricycle, like full-blown butt-ass naked, just wearing heels, but then occasionally ask her to wear a mask over her face. And honestly, yeah, I think it just became a little bit too fucking much, and I would personally be offended if I was her. After a few years of marriage, I think she also begins getting creeped out by him and pretty much left him to his own devices while she just focused on raising the children, I guess. Now, Jerry, since he's so into photography, would still have his dark room. Now, I'm going to say dark room in like air quotes because it's not, I don't think it's a real dark room, but it's down in the basement where he would spend the rest of his hobby time, either developing all these cringy ass photos of his wife in his own little personal man cave filled with previously stolen female underwear and shoes. He would also occasionally use his personal space to model his own specially sized women's underwear and size 13 women's shoes that at some point he had managed to acquire for himself. Like, I wonder where a man and I wonder if there was feet that big back in the 60s. Honestly, that's a crazy size. I wonder how many women have that big feet. I'm sure it happens, but just to be back in that age, I don't know. And for the record, I don't want to say dressing in women's clothes is bad. I would say beating women up and hurting them for their shoes is the part that, you know, not anything else, just to be clear. Now, by 1967, Jerry had to move the family over to Portland after getting a better electrician job, and soon became a father for a second time, and this time to a son named Jason. He was apparently much more excited to have a son than he was a daughter. How ironic. This time, though, apparently the wife didn't tell Jerry when she went into labor because she didn't want him in the room while she gave birth because she had since learned a little more about her husband's weird interests, I think. When Jerry found out that she had basically cheated him out of seeing a child crown out of her, he reportedly got like super fucking bitter and upset and fell into this weird depression even, and unfortunately started taking it out again on random local women. When he was ready, Jerry apparently waited around on the street until he noticed one young woman in particular that was walking alone in downtown Portland. Jerry even committed to taking the same bus that she did, which was leading him straight to her apartment. When they get there, he ends up waiting around outside until it's late at night to break in and begin stealing her clothes. Now, because he's probably loud as fuck, because he's, huge, bumping into shit in her closet, she literally ends up waking up and again starts freaking out and yelling at him to get out. Now that's when Jerry stops going through her closet and jumps onto her bed and begins raping this poor woman while simultaneously strangling her until she falls unconscious. He then takes whatever he wants from her closet and leaves the apartment. Jerry was also never connected to this attack. That's unfortunately giving him more confidence that he is not going to get caught. I think Jerry's getting so confident at this point that he's willing to out himself to his wife because one time she had apparently made a comment to Jerry that he had recently gained a little weight or something, which he took super personally. And he apparently stomps off into his dark room and returns back a few minutes later in a full-on lingerie set, complete with his huge-ass high heels. And he stomps over to her in his clodhoppers and says, "Well, does this make me look slimmer?" Like, apparently leaving his wife abso-fucking-lutely speechless. He stares her down for a few more seconds and then stomps back off downstairs. That just happened. And his wife is definitely uncomfortable and probably sort of backs the fuck off, avoiding Jerry at all costs now. He would also start to get a little bit petty with her too at this point, and he started taunting her with random pictures of himself that he had taken all dressed up in his fancy heels and satin panties. Like he was doing it just to bug her. So basically, even his own wife is beginning to find the thought of having sex with Jerry just completely unbearable. And he would also start complaining of having these weekly headaches or migraines that would eventually turn into quote-unquote blackouts. And he would use this excuse to go out at night and steal more women's underwear and shoes. Beginning in early 1968, Jerry would now step up the aggression a bit more and begin looking for some real-life Barbie dolls, choosing the next pretty young brunette in nice shoes that would come across his dumbass path. Linda Slauson was just 19 years old and happened to be raising money for college over the summer by selling encyclopedias door-to-door when she unfortunately came across 28-year-old Jerry's creepalicious ass. Now, when Jerry's out in his yard doing some yard work, he notices Miss Slauson walking around in the neighborhood and she's seemingly lost, so he waves her down and acts like he's the one that ordered books from her. So she comes over and they start talking, and he somehow convinces this poor girl to give him her sales pitch down in his basement, where he said they wouldn't be interrupted by his family. So he then leads Linda down the basement stairs, where he suddenly strikes her in the back of the head with some random wooden 2x4, hard enough to knock her completely unconscious. And Jerry then strangles her to death before she's able to come to. And this whole thing is completely unplanned and spontaneous. He just killed someone. And suddenly now he has a body that he can do whatever he wants with, unfortunately. Suddenly, because all these options have just opened for him, and his family is upstairs, he runs up there, and he actually decides to suggest to the wife and the kids that they should go out and have themselves a nice dinner. Maybe grab some fast food and bring some back for him. Which the wife does, because I bet being in the same room with Jerry just makes her skin fucking crawl anyways. So he finally gets the fam bam out of the house. He's free to do whatever he wants to this poor woman's body in the basement. And then suddenly, Jerry's cock-blocked again by some friend of his who randomly shows up. Now, Jerry's like anxious to do something with his body, so he apparently tells his friend to kick rocks because he's busy making nitroglycerin in the basement, which somehow apparently works, and his friend ends up also leaving. The guy's like, oh, you're nitroglycerin? Cool, I'll just leave you alone. Deuces. When he's finally able to be alone with this girl, he undresses her. He changes her into some of his like other favorite pairs of underwear that he's already stolen. And he proceeds to take pictures for his creepy collection. Eventually, he realizes that he can't keep her body there in the basement forever. So he then decides, interestingly, to cut off her left foot specifically with a random hacksaw and throws it into the basement freezer for safekeeping. Could you imagine being the wife and going to make dinner and then, finding, I'm not even have to say it, do I? Anyways. Later that night, after his family goes to bed, Jerry then takes Linda Slausson's body to the Wilsonville Bridge on Interstate 5, parked his car on the side of the road, and proceeds to tie an old car engine to Linda's body using copper wire and nylon rope. And he then throws her and this engine off the bridge, hoping to sink her body into the Willamette River, where to everyone else, it kind of just looks like he's changing a tire on the side of the road. Now, Linda Slausson's family actually started a widespread missing persons case the very next day, and eventually her car was located in Jerry's Portland suburb, but it left police and her family little to go off of. Unfortunately, the company that Linda was selling encyclopedias for didn't really keep records of which homes were being visited, just the neighborhoods. However, Jerry still had her foot as a keepsake for his crimes, plus the photos of her wearing his underwear. And before it got too horribly decomposed, too, Jerry would spend his free time using this poor woman's left foot to dress up in other stolen women's shoes and would masturbate to it the whole time. Now, when the foot did eventually get too grimy, he also weighed it down with some random car part and again threw it into the Willamette River. Now, in the meantime, Jerry gets a new job working in Lebanon, Oregon, and manages to find his family a new place to live over in Salem. Now, he specifically picked this next home because it had a nice, private, unattached garage that he would declare as his new own personal space once again. It was completely separate from the house, and the wife and the kids were not to enter the garage without using this specially built intercom system that Jerry had rigged up so that they wouldn't disturb him whilst he's playing dress up or whatever. If they needed something from the freezer, they would have to beep in and give him a heads up. And a quick Google search actually shows this same exact house still standing, garage and all, which is incredible when you realize exactly what happened there. I wonder if the people who live there now have any idea, since technically nothing happened in the home, just a garage. Every state's different as far as having to tell you how many people or if somebody died in the house, so I have questions. Anyways, a few months later, after they move into this house, is when Jerry happened to find his next victim. 23-year-old Jan Susan Whitney's car had broken down on the side of Interstate 5 between Salem and Albany. Unfortunately for her, Jerry was driving home from work this day on I-5 and noticed her there along the side of the road. She happened to already be with two other men who were walking by and had stopped to help her fix the car. So Jerry then pulls over to make a party of 4. He gets out and offers to fix her car right up. He knows exactly what's wrong with it. He just needs some tools from his home really quick. He even offers the 2 other men a ride home on the way. So they all agree, and Jerry ends up giving all 3 people a ride back into Portland, making sure to drop off the 2 men first, while assuring Jan he just needs to quickly stop at home to grab some tools and he'll fix her car right up. So they pull in front of his house, and Jerry goes, shit, I don't have my house keys. Let's just wait for my wife. She'll be home any minute. So basically this lady's stuck with him, and while awkwardly waiting, Jerry decides to hop in the back seat behind Jan, who's in the front passenger seat, and he just starts asking her some really random ass questions. And while she's deep in thought trying to answer some weird question he asked her, out of nowhere, he starts using her seatbelt to strangle her right there in his fucking driveway. Like, the neighbor could have been mowing the lawn and it wouldn't have made a difference. When she's no longer alive, he pulls her into the back seat and literally has sex with her body right there. Still in broad daylight of the neighbors or even his wife, who should be pulling up at any minute. But before that happens, he manages to quickly move her body into the garage where he did his usual change of clothes, take the pictures, breaks to masturbate, and then does it all over again in a different outfit. When he's done using her body, he somehow manages to hang it up from his garage ceiling using like a pulley system that he had created. And he literally leaves her there, hanging in his garage, for the entire fucking weekend while he leaves town with his family. Literally just spread eagle in the garage hanging. Now, while he's out of town, too, and by the grace of fucking God or something, someone driving around in the neighborhood happens to accidentally crash into the side of Jerry's garage. The same garage a body is hanging in, right? And they leave this huge-ass hole in the side of the structure. Now, the police actually come out to take note of the damage done to the home, but since it appeared that nobody in the house was home that weekend, and apparently no one fucking looked in the garage hole, because if they had, they would have seen Jan Whitney's dead body just hanging there from the fucking ceiling. But no, nothing happened. Literally, nothing happened. And that's what's more frustrating here is like, you know, we're all gonna die, but if we get murdered, I'm less afraid of getting murdered and more afraid that the cops won't fucking solve my murder, you know? When Jerry did come back to town, though, and found what had happened, Jerry decides to take the body down, of course, wrap it up in some tarp, and drag it over to the shed before calling the police back over to the house to assess the damage from the inside of the garage. Now, the police have literally no fucking idea, and once they leave, Jerry brings her body back into the garage and decides that instead of keeping her foot this time, he weirdly decides to cut off her right breast and then somehow uses it to make a mold and then fills the mold with sawdust in some weird-ass taxidermy project to make, like, a copy of this boob. After this, Jerry again would tie up a heavy car part to her body and throw her also into the nearby Willamette River. About 4 months later, 18-year-old honor student from Oregon State University named Karen Sprinker went missing on March 27th of 1969 when she failed to show up for a lunch date that she had planned with her mom that afternoon. Using a toy gun, fucking Jerry literally corners this poor Karen when she's alone on the bottom floor of a parking garage in downtown Portland and forces her into his car. Jerry then drives them back to his home's garage, where he didn't immediately kill her, but instead forced himself on her while she was still alive this time, and then forces her to change clothes and dress up in his creepy, disgusting fucking outfits for him while he takes pictures of her the entire time. Nightmares, dude. And then when the photo shoot is over, Jerry then slowly lifts this pulley system to hang this girl and watch her slowly die before heading inside to eat dinner with his family, just leaving her, again, in the garage to die, slowly. Like, this guy's a fucking monster, honestly. Like, the Mindhunters makes him look too good. I don't like it. When he comes back out after dinner to this lifeless girl, he fucking slices off both of her breasts and then for some reason changes her out of her bra from the one that she was originally wearing to a bigger black one of his that obviously doesn't fit her body before or after the removal of her breasts. So he then stuffs the bra with newspaper to fill in the gaps where her breasts would be, and he says that was to apparently keep her from bleeding in his car. Once again, he tosses her body into the river after having tied it to a heavy car part. Now, with Karen's sudden disappearance and a couple other missing girls from the area, Local police would begin looking for any witnesses that might have seen anything weird that day at the mall when Karen Sprinker went missing. And witnesses actually do come out claiming that, oddly, they remember seeing a rather large-sized man dressed in women's clothing down in the parking lot that day. Meaning, Jerry was actually stalking these women out while dressed up in women's clothing as a disguise, apparently. But he's literally 6 feet tall, so that's kind of noticeable nonetheless. And, like, what kind of weird-ass Miss Doubtfire type shit is this? Like, I don't know, but it doesn't get tied back to Jerry for a while. His next attempt took place about a month later with 24-year-old Sharon, who also happened to be walking alone to the parking garage at the Portland State University. When she gets to the bottom of these parking garage stairs, Jerry fucking ambushes her with this toy gun and says to her, "If you don't scream, I won't shoot you." But she was like, "Fuck this shit," and screams super loud. And this is when they apparently get into like a little struggle, and he tried to cover her mouth to keep her quiet. But this badass bitch actually bites down on his thumb, which pisses him off, so he hits her on the back of the head super hard, pushing her down basically, and he just runs the fuck off without any more damage being done to Sharon. Thank God. So this woman is actually able to call police and able to give them a description of a tall, fat man with blue eyes and freckles dressed in women's clothing. So police have a possible attacker who is tall, fat, ugly, blue eyes, freckles, and possibly dressing in women's clothing prior to the attacks. So, since the last attempt was failed, the very next day, Jerry goes back out on April 22nd of 1969, and again tries to abduct someone. And this is when he comes across a 14-year-old named Leanne, who was luckily able to escape Jerry unharmed, leaving him with blue balls apparently, because he then tries again within hours of this second failed attempt. Thankfully, this girl was also able to tell police that this man had freckles, and this time tried to get her into his sports car, which we know now was actually a car that he was borrowing from his mom, that he hated oh so much, but was most likely used to aid his disguise when creeping around. And just hours later, it was a 15-year-old girl named Gloria Jean Smith who happened to be walking home from Parrish Middle School when Jerry approached her, and he also tried convincing her to get into the same sports car. Gloria Jean, though, happened to notice one of her older female neighbors named Phyllis, and she was outside gardening in her yard, so Gloria made a run for it and ran to the safety of her old neighbor, and Jerry was forced to run off the other way on his third failed kidnapping attempt, so you know he's getting pretty desperate at this point. The next day, April 23rd of 1969, Jerry goes back to downtown Portland, this time to the Lloyd Shopping Center, when he sees 22-year-old Linda Saley with her arms full of birthday presents in the mall's parking garage. Now, like, parking garages are just, they're the worst. So he walks up to her with his trusty fake police badge and acts to her like he's investigating some reports of a shoplifter, which happened to match her description. Now, Linda apparently didn't fight Jerry at all on this and actually follows him back to his car and gets inside the damn thing. So he must have acted like a real cop. And you know they're going straight back to his dingy little nasty garage, where this time he apparently ties her up and again leaves her there, but alive and not hanging. He just ties her up and leaves her sitting there in his garage. Again, he literally goes inside his house for like a half hour or some shit when he finally comes back out and finds that she's still just sitting where he left her in his garage. She didn't even try to escape, the poor thing. Which most people would think is crazy or would attribute to her being in shock, but her not realizing she might have lived if she would have just tried to get out, but for some reason she didn't. According to Jerry himself, though, she did end up fighting him very hard when he finally attempted to hang her from the ceiling like he did with Karen, and he ended up strangling her instead with his bare hands. During the act of strangling her, though, Jerry got all hot and bothered and ended up raping her as she's literally dying and the struggle is over. Now, this is where it just gets too much for me, honestly. Jerry gets this weird idea to try something new. This time, he tried attaching jumper cables to Linda's torso and legs while she's hanging, figuring the electrical current from his car would go through the wires and make her hanging body, quote-unquote, dance, or what he said was jump like a frog. Like, what the fuck? But unfortunately for him, and thank God for everybody, this experiment did not work. It didn't work, don't worry. Still disgusting. For this victim, Jerry apparently didn't want to keep her breasts because he considered them too small for his liking. So, fuck him. But basically used this as an excuse to convince himself that he would have to go out again and get another body because he didn't take any pictures or keep anything of this one to remember her by. And like all the others, Jerry just tosses her into the nearby river after being attached to some random car parts. But now that's 4 young women who have now gone missing in a matter of 1 year, and this is 1969 too. And Oregon doesn't really see that much crime, so this is a pretty big deal to local officers and detectives. They are aware something is going on, but there's not much to go off of besides some fat, freckled Mrs. Doubtfire-looking motherfucker who's trying to lure young girls into his sports car. But within recent weeks of the most recent missing girls' disappearances, the body of 22-year-old Linda Salee was found on May 10th of 1969, floating down the Long Tom River near Monroe, Oregon. A man named George, who him and his young son were fishing off a bridge there, thought they saw a bundle of rags floating by on the river, but as it got closer, they realized what it actually was, a fairly bloated body. The man and his son then went back to their car and they drove down to the nearest gas station to call police, and within hours, police end up locating the partially dressed body of Linda Salee, who had gone missing just weeks before, and found that her body had obviously been poorly weighed down by an old car transmission. Her autopsy would show that she had been strangled, and knowing that there are a few missing girls from the area, investigators continue searching the river, hoping to find any more signs that could lead them to the killer, when they end up locating a second body just 2 days later. On May 12th, they discovered 19-year-old Karen Sprinker's half-dressed body, also weighed down in the Long Tom River, just about 50 feet away from the site of where they found Linda's body. The Karen, too, was found to have been tied to a 6-cylinder car engine using the same copper wiring and nylon rope that was found on Linda. Now, police obviously begin to realize that their little area is possibly dealing with a sick and twisted murderer of sorts. The term serial killer really wasn't coined until later in the 1970s by the FBI's Robert Russler and John Douglas, of course, who, according to an article from Psychology Today, says, Robert Russler believed that the conclusion of every murder increases the tension and desire of a serial killer to commit a more perfect murder in the future, one closer to his or her ideal fantasy. Rather than being satisfied when they murder, serial killers are instead agitated toward repeating their killings in unending serial cycle. So, police take note of the location where the women were dumped and then the similarities between those women's bodies and the way in which they were disposed of. All the similar materials indicated that it was likely done by some person or people, and police also happened to notice that the knots used on both of the bodies were considered electrician knots. Now, it's technically referred to as an underwriter's knot and is usually used in electrical wiring as like strain relief to prevent the cables from being pulled. But this is a common knot that electricians would use, and so now the police are like, maybe it's an electrician. So police figure the guy's local, possibly an electrician, freckled, 6 feet, has a sports car, and in the meantime, they're going to be looking more into Linda Salee and Karen Sprinker's personal history. Police learn that they both happen to be attending classes at the Oregon State University, so they begin interviewing other students who attend there. On May 14th, police learned from Linda and Karen's co-eds that there had recently been some weird older guy calling into the Sackett Hall dormitory asking for random girls. He'd be like, can I talk to Katie? And then, of course, Katie would then get on the phone, and Jerry would claim he was a Vietnam veteran with psychic abilities, and his power is what led them to meet. And he would literally fish for blind dates. And he's fucking married. And some of these girls actually fell for this shit. One of them, who had actually accepted to meet this mystery man for a lunch date, ends up telling police that she met some tall, pudgy, red-headed man who had really fucking creeped her out. She said the weirdest thing about him was that he seemed to be strangely interested in all the recent local murders that were happening, and that he was just continuously bringing them up during their date. But then towards the end of the date, he even said something to her like, "How did you know I would bring you home and not take you to the river and strangle you?" Which obviously bothered the shit out of her, so she got the fuck out of there real quick. Like, fuck this shit, I'm out. You know, so officers definitely want to speak with this guy. So they had the wise idea to have this girl call the creepy psychic veteran back up and ask about a second date, which she was obviously not happy about doing, but apparently agreed to do. So she calls him back up, and fucking Jerry stupidly agrees because he's getting real cocky and doesn't find this suspicious at all. And when he shows up to get his dick wet, the local police managed to catch him. Luckily, completely fucking off guard on May 18th of 1969. Interestingly, though, he readily identifies himself as Jerome Henry Brudos. And they learn that he is, in fact, an electrician, and he does happen to drive a sports car from time to time. And he perfectly matches the descriptions given by all the failed kidnapping attempts. But police don't really have anything but all circumstantial evidence, right? Because, no DNA exists yet. But they do come out of this interview feeling very fucking sus and are most definitely going to keep their eye on him because they want more information. About a week later, police actually go to Jerry's house to interview him again. But this time, just some casual follow-up questions. But Jerry's so fucking obnoxious that he even invites the police into his torture chamber of sorts of a garage. And when he notices them, obviously eyeballing all the rope he has hanging from the ceiling, because it looks similar to the ones pulled off the bodies, Jerry literally cuts off a piece and hands it over and says some shit like, "Geez, you want some of this rope? You're super interested in it." And the police are literally only there at his house to find more evidence. So of course they're like, yeah, thank you. And because they only came for follow-up questions and didn't really have a proper search warrant, when he literally straight up offers what they need, they don't hesitate for a fucking second and just take the rope and mosey on their way. Now, after a comparison to the rope found on Linda and Karen's bodies, police then decide to pull up a background check on this motherfucker, and that's when they get really concerned. That's when they find out that he has been to a mental hospital for similar prior aggressive charges. Bingo. Thank you. Re-released. So now at this point, police are building their case against Jerry, and he's having second thoughts on offering up the rope sample and actually decides to call up a local lawyer named Dale Drake. And obviously this lawyer straight up tells him to stop fucking talking to the police if he does have anything to hide. But by this time, forensic evidence has already linked Jerry to the victims, and it was his own fucking fault. So now, police are going to be wanting to take a closer look at his car. And unfortunately, Jerry is realizing this as well. Sensing that they are coming for the car, he made sure to get the entire inside of his car thoroughly cleaned out before the police could come back and drop an actual search warrant. When the police do come, they find everything inside his car soaking wet. And what he tells them is, my son stupidly left the window down while we went through the car wash. Yeah, I'm sure those cops were so fucking pissed, to be honest. However, the police also have something up their sleeves too, and that was Gloria Jean Smith, the 15-year-old who got away from Jerry while walking home from school. She was actually able to pick Jerry's big ugly-ass photo out of 10 others in a photo lineup, pretty much confirming to police all their suspicions of Jerry. Jerry was then promptly arrested on May 29th of 1969, and he was charged with the armed assault initially for the failed kidnapping of Gloria Jean Smith. The police would then use this as leverage to speak with Jerry about the other 4 missing women in Oregon. At the time of his arrest, he was taken into custody and forced to be strip searched, where police end up finding him wearing women's satin panties, which of course you know was like the icing on the cake for these investigators. And police would also, of course, come across the various breasts literally just hanging on the wall of Jerry's home, and they even found Jan Whitney's car keys. Inside the garage, police apparently also discovered lists that Jerry had accumulated of nearby sororities and female phone numbers or addresses, all of his stolen underwear and bras and shoes, and of course, all of Jerry's creepy-ass photography of random women, some of them naked, some of them literally hanging in agony, some of them cut up in parts, which they believed confirmed the death of at least 3 of the missing women. Now, in one of these photos of his assumed victims, who appeared to be hanging from the inside of the garage, and in one of the photos, there happens to be a mirror set below the person hanging, which also captures a reflection of a small section of Jerry's stupid fucking face in its reflection, making it virtually undeniable that he had taken this photo of this poor, defenseless, now obviously dead woman. And with that, on June 3rd, Jerry was charged again, but this time for the murders of Jan Whitney, Karen Sprinker, and Linda Salee. After being booked into county jail, Jerry made a strategic phone call back to his lawyer, Dale Drake, who then comes down the next day and spends 5 hours speaking with Jerry about his options. And by the end of it all, even his lawyer is like, Jerry, you're one of the weirdest fucking dudes, honestly. Your only chance at this is to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. So, because he's decided that he is not going to be denying that he killed these women, he's making the argument that he's just mentally insane. So he continues talking to police. During the interrogation portion of his arrest, Jerry boldly claimed to the detectives that he had an IQ of 165. And initially, they had a hard time getting him to talk until they realized they would have to ask him the type of questions where he would feel comfortable enough bragging about his crimes to police. You know, they kind of had to boost his ego up a little bit. When they finally got him to break the ice, he then literally spent 15 minutes talking to detectives about the red underwear that he kept from his first victim. Ew. Just ew. Soon, he's singing like a fucking canary, confirming really that Jerry only wanted these girls dead, not alive, and they were purely his dolls to play with. They were nothing more than objects to him, like candy wrappers you toss when you no longer have any use for them. That's what someone who spoke with Jerry Brudos actually said. They also note that he apparently continued eating and asking for food, despite talking for hours about violently murdering 4 women, then continuing to use their bodies for whatever he wanted about their deaths. He detailed to police about how he attempted to make what he called paperweights using the breasts that he had kept from his victims. And he admitted after every murder that he would then dress up in his own female clothes and masturbate. That's when Jerry could do what he wanted, because it wasn't really the act of killing that got Jerry off, but it was the act of combining his fetish for the shoes on your dead body, like a doll, that he really wanted. Now, detectives find it incredibly off-putting that while talking about his crimes, the level of detail and passion that he ends up using to describe the panties or the shoes that come up. It's just clear he has quite the eye for women's clothing, okay? They were also very much bothered by the fact that he felt completely fine with these murders and only seemed to somewhat care about the future of his family and then, of course, his own future. Now, the courts had to figure out if Jerry is really criminally insane or not. So on June 4th of 1969, Jerry had to take 7 different tests from both the prosecution and the defense to evaluate whether or not Jerry could be considered criminally insane, and he was not. The court was able to determine that Jerry did have what's considered an above-average IQ, and with that, clearly understood the circumstances of his crimes in which the level he went on to plan them out and dispose of the bodies. They diagnosed him with the antisocial personality disorder, believing it was manifested by his fetish with both shoes and cross-dressing, as well as his interest in, quote, exhibitionism, voyeurism, and especially sadism, end quote. Now, because he can't say that he's mentally insane anymore, Jerry decides to start changing his tune, and on June 27th of 1969, 3 days before his trial is set to begin, Jerome Henry Brudos pleads guilty to the 3 murders of Karen Sprinker, Jan Whitney, and Linda Sallee. He was sentenced to 3 life terms in the Oregon State Penitentiary for those murders, and though he confessed to 4, the last murder victim being the saleswoman of Linda Slauson. And apparently, police never charged him with her murder because they could never recover her body and only had pictures of her foot. Which in some weird way wasn't enough proof that she was actually dead, but was for Jan Whitney, whose body they also hadn't yet recovered. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and it's...
That's some bullshit.
Bullshit is right. With 3 life terms and only being 30 years old, that meant that Jerry would have to be 66 until he would become eligible for parole, which he should never get anyway, but that was all based on his choice to plea out. During his early years at the penitentiary, Jerry apparently didn't make very many allies, and he was targeted for assault within months. And because he wasn't a very respected prisoner, he apparently kept away from the other inmates mainly, while simultaneously preparing for his upcoming appeal. Eventually, though, Jerry's able to acquire just stacks and stacks of women's shoe and clothing catalogs there in his prison cell, as he would request them from store chains because they reportedly suffice just as well as, like, Playboy for him. Honestly, it's just too bad he couldn't keep it to the catalogs in the first place. I mean, Jesus. Unfortunately for everybody, he didn't live in a time period where actual sex dolls are a thing, because maybe this could have gone a totally different way, you know? Literally a month after his incarceration, too, the body of Jan Whitney would be discovered on July 27th, and this time was found to be anchored by a railroad tie in the Willamette River, near Independence, Oregon. Now, thankfully, he was already serving time for this murder, so now she could at least be returned to her family. And one of the most interesting things here, too, is that not a lot of people seem to recall Jerry Brudos when referencing serial killers, and when doing the research, I found that it's partly because the much more infamous Manson family murders had occurred just weeks after Jerry's conviction. And being that, you know, the famous actress Sharon Tate had been viciously stabbed to death during her final months of pregnancy, that case ended up making much bigger headlines than Jerry's crimes and obviously made a bigger dent in history for some reason. Ironically, almost everyone knows Charles Manson, and technically he didn't even kill anyone, yet you mentioned Jerry Brudos and most people are like, "Le who?" But the investigation wasn't completely over yet for Jerry's crimes, because apparently one of the neighbors near Jerry actually claimed that they witnessed his wife helping him move something outside the home one time, which was enough for the police to actually implicate his wife within the scope of his crimes as a possible accessory. They were always suspect that she knew about his crimes, like, how the fuck did she not see these weird titty things on the wall, you know? And 2 months after Jerry is sent to prison, his wife actually ends up having her own trial, where she would end up testifying on her own behalf. All that she was able to recall that her husband did that was odd was catching him a few times in, like, women's underwear and bras, but she testified that she literally saw nothing blatantly criminal. And that actually won her an acquittal on October 2nd of 1969 when she was announced not guilty by a jury of her peers. So later that next year, she would seek and be awarded a divorce from Jerry's ass, and she petitioned to remove his parental rights and have her and the children's names changed so they could move away forever and be free of this fucking pervert. And about 4 years into his incarceration, Jerry's first appeal was made and argued that he received ineffective counsel, of course, and also claiming he didn't understand what he was agreeing to when he pled guilty. He tried to claim that he only answered yes to killing his victims because his attorneys were elbowing him. But he claims that he didn't even know what they were talking about when they offered him the plea. Naturally, his appeal was rejected, and he would apparently get his second chance just a few years later. In 1997, fucking Jerry tried to reason that one of the incriminating photos that were used against him shouldn't have been because it didn't show the entire body of the woman he was convicted of murdering. Which I think he was trying to use the court's own logic against them, but again, his last appeal effort was also rejected. About 10 years later, Anne Rule would hop on board and cover all the dingy-ass details of Jerry's crimes in her book titled The Lust Killer. And finally, after 35 years behind bars, when Jerry's up for parole eligibility in June of 1995, the Oregon State Parole Board basically told Jerry to get completely fucked and that he was never leaving the confines of the Oregon State Penitentiary unless it was in a body bag. That didn't stop him from continuing to interview for parole every single 2 years until his death, though. On March 28th of 2006, Jerry Brudos reportedly died at 5:10 a.m. at the age of 67 years old from a long-time battle with liver cancer. At last, Jerry is a wiener. At the time of his death in 2006, Jerry was titled the longest prisoner in Oregon's Department of Corrections, with the total of 37 years behind bars. So yeah, Jerry's a wiener. We all know, at least if you watch Mindhunters on Netflix, that they literally do the best fucking job finding people who look and act the perfect part of these like early 1960s killers. And Jerry's character, Happy Anderson, fucking nailed his portrayal of Jerry. And honestly, I think Jerry's character now is the creepiest of the show so far, now that I know his full background. Unfortunately, the show doesn't go horribly into detail with his crimes, but this podcast episode should give you a hella good context for just how fucking creepy he was, right? And if you haven't watched Mindhunter on Netflix, like, what are you waiting for, sis? Fucking, it's right up your alley, I promise. However, as far as the show goes, I have found that as much as Jerry probably would have liked John Douglas and Robert Ressler to bring him a woman's shoe to masturbate with, that was actually just made for the show and not a factual part of the interviews. So no, Jerry did not actually jerk himself off into a stiletto in front of two men in jail like you've seen in the show. Didn't happen. Apparently, John Douglas said he wishes he would have thought of that, though, speaking to some of these killers. I think the biggest takeaway from this case could be the argument that there's obviously some odd parallel between the relationship that's formed between a child and its mom, and that will likely determine the shape and the way this child sees and deals with life and women for the rest of their life. So being a mom is a very important job. We need to stop contributing. We as moms need to stop contributing to the production of serial killers and recognize how much power we hold to our children's mental health and happiness and the safety of others. Yeah. And on that note, I have a lot of shout outs to do. Like a lot. I'm gonna get those out of the way. Patrons, I have Hannah, Tara, maybe Tara, Andriana, Krista, Desiree, Jessie, and Angelina. And I also wanted to thank Emu Oos, Purple Goddess, K Gray 1982, Linz Genero, LCD, and EJ McF for all of you guys taking the time to leave some awesome iTunes reviews. Thank you all so much, you guys. I also wanted to give a heads up to prospective patrons that I'm going to be adjusting my Patreon tiers to better fit my availability right now. I haven't been able to do bonus episodes as often as I promised, and I don't want to false advertise, basically. So I'm going to take that off. I'm not removing any episodes, and I will still be adding bonus episodes, but I just cannot promise them on a monthly basis at this point. Regular episodes will also be coming, and will also be early for patrons still. Another update I wanted to mention is that there are a couple new shirt designs in the merch store right now. Some include logos, some include true crime sayings, and I have a couple special designs I did to help raise money for the victims of true crime that I'm always talking about. So when you purchase one of those specially marked designs, I will donate a portion of the profits to the charity named in the item description. There's currently a couple choices and I'm interested in making more. Please check out the merch store and let me know if there's anything you guys would like to see. I would really like to have a little something for everyone and of course with your guys' input. Until next time, my loves, as always, remember to be safe, lock those damn doors. All right, you guys, bye. And that was the tea. I hope you enjoyed my rendition of the story, and if so, please tell all your creepylicious friends about it. You can find the sources I used for the episode in its description, and if you'd like to support the podcast, please check out patreon.com/gingerthetruecrimequeen, where I keep all the extra bonus goodies.